There comes a moment when being rushed feels harmless, even necessary. But some questions, when skipped too often, quietly shape health, safety, and peace of mind. Later in life, clarity is not about speed. It is about pausing long enough to protect dignity and choice. Below is the full continuous script, written as one flowing narration with no chapter titles, no labels, and no breaks that announce sections. The transitions are emotional and natural, and the tone remains calm, reflective, and senior-focused throughout. There comes a moment when rushing feels harmless. Life has taught us how to move quickly, how to adjust, how to keep things going without slowing others down. Over time, that instinct becomes second nature. We answer before questions are finished. We nod even when something is unclear. We tell ourselves we will sort it out later. Most days, nothing goes wrong, and that quiet success convinces us that pausing is unnecessary. But later in life, rushing changes meaning. What once felt efficient can quietly become costly, not in dramatic ways but in small accumulations, missed details, misunderstood instructions, unspoken concerns. These moments do not announce themselves as mistakes. They simply settle into daily life, shaping comfort, safety, and peace of mind without asking permission. Many seniors take pride in not causing trouble, in being easygoing, in not slowing things down. After a lifetime of responsibility, there is dignity in handling things smoothly and independently. Asking fewer questions can feel like competence, like respect for others' time, like proof that you are still capable. Yet clarity is not the opposite of capability. It is one of its strongest forms. Rushing often begins as kindness toward others, but it can quietly become neglect toward oneself. Appointments feel brief, conversations feel fast, information arrives quickly, sometimes layered, sometimes unfamiliar, and instead of pausing, the instinct is to move forward, to keep pace, to trust memory, to assume understanding will come naturally. At first, it often does. Experience fills in the gaps. Familiar patterns help decode what was missed. But over time, life changes just enough that those patterns no longer fit perfectly. Instructions evolve. Medications change. Systems become more complex. And still, the habit of rushing remains. What is often missed is not major information, but nuance, timing, options, warnings delivered gently rather than forcefully. These details matter more with age, not less. Because the margin for correction narrows, because recovery takes longer, because small misunderstandings can ripple outward. The first question many people stop asking is the one that protects understanding. It sounds simple, almost too simple to matter. A quiet pause, a request for clarification, a moment to say, "Can you explain that again?" Or, "What does that mean for me?" These questions feel unnecessary when things seem familiar. They feel awkward when time is short, and they feel indulgent when others appear busy. So they are skipped. Instead, the mind fills in blanks with assumptions. It draws on past experiences, even when circumstances are new. It assumes that instructions resemble previous ones, that changes are minor, that details are interchangeable. Most of the time, this works well enough to avoid immediate trouble, but well enough is not the same as clear. Understanding is not about intelligence, it is about alignment. When understanding is incomplete, actions drift slightly off course. Maybe a routine is followed at the wrong time. Maybe a recommendation is interpreted differently than intended. Maybe something important is delayed because its urgency was not fully grasped. None of this feels dramatic. It feels like life. But life later in age is less forgiving of drift. Small misalignments can accumulate into discomfort, confusion, or unnecessary risk, and because the original misunderstanding happened quietly, its effects can feel mysterious later on. Many seniors blame themselves in these moments. They assume they forgot, that they misunderstood because of age. But often the issue began with a rushed moment when clarification felt inconvenient. Asking for understanding is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of stewardship. It protects the effort you put into daily life. It honors the body and mind that must carry out what is decided. Closely tied to understanding is another question that is often skipped, the one that guards safety. Safety questions are rarely urgent in tone. They are often framed gently or implied rather than stated. You might want to be careful with this. Some people notice side effects. This works best under certain conditions. When time is short, these comments can pass by without full attention. Rushing makes safety feel optional. It frames caution as something to consider later rather than something to integrate immediately. And because nothing goes wrong right away, that choice feels justified. But safety concerns are rarely about immediate outcomes. They are about probability, about reducing risk over time, about preventing scenarios that only appear under specific conditions: fatigue, low light, distraction, stress. Skipping safety questions often looks like confidence. I've done this before. I know how this works. I'll be fine. These statements are not reckless. They are based on experience, but experience also changes the context in which safety operates. What was safe at 50 may require adjustment at 70, not because of fragility, but because the body responds differently. Balance, reaction time, sensitivity all evolve quietly. Safety questions help account for those changes without turning life into a restriction. When safety questions are skipped, risk increases quietly. There is no alarm, just a narrowing margin. And when something eventually goes wrong, it often feels sudden, even though the conditions were forming slowly. Asking about safety is not about fear. It is about foresight. It allows life to continue smoothly, without interruption. Another question that often disappears when time feels short is the one that preserves choice. Choice is central to dignity. It allows seniors to remain authors of their own lives, yet rushed moments often reduce choice without announcing it. Decisions are made by default. Plans proceed along the easiest path. Alternatives are not discussed because they take time. How many options do I have? Is there another way? What happens if I wait? These questions can feel inconvenient when schedules are tight. They can feel unnecessary when trust is high. So they are left unasked. The result is not always dissatisfaction. Often, things turn out fine, but over time, a pattern forms where choices are shaped by momentum rather than intention. Life becomes reactive rather than deliberate. Later in life, this matters deeply, because changes often come from outside: new systems, new expectations, new limitations. Asking about options ensures that adjustments happen with consent, not surprise. When choice is preserved, independence remains intact even when circumstances shift. When choice is skipped, independence can erode quietly, replaced by routines that feel imposed rather than chosen. Asking about options is not about resistance. It is about alignment. It ensures that decisions fit the life you are living now, not the one others assume you are living. Equally important is a question that is rarely spoken aloud, the one directed inward. How does this feel? Rushing teaches us to override internal signals, to push through discomfort, to delay rest, to ignore small signs that something is off. For much of life, this resilience is necessary. It allows responsibilities to be met. It allows challenges to be overcome. But later in life, the body's signals become more valuable, not less. They arrive earlier. They are quieter. And they are often easier to dismiss. When time feels short, internal questions are the first to go. There is no space to check in, no pause to assess. The body becomes something to manage later. This can lead to subtle strain, discomfort that lingers, fatigue that accumulates, tension that becomes normal. None of it dramatic enough to demand attention, but all of it shaping daily comfort. Listening inward does not require long reflection. It requires permission. Permission to pause for a moment and notice whether something feels supportive or depleting, whether it fits or strains, whether it aligns or conflicts. Ignoring these signals does not make them disappear. It only delays their expression. And when they eventually surface, they often do so with more intensity. Asking the body how it feels is not indulgent. It is preventive. It allows adjustments to remain small and manageable. Finally, there is one more question that rushing quietly erases the question that protects peace. Is this clear enough for me to feel calm? Peace of mind is often mistaken for the absence of problems, but more often it comes from the absence of unresolved uncertainty. When questions linger unasked, the mind carries them quietly. They resurface later, often at night, often when distractions fade. Rushing may save time in the moment, but it often borrows that time back in worry. Clarifying now prevents rumination later. It allows the mind to rest rather than revisit. Many seniors accept background worry as normal. They assume it is part of aging. But often, it is simply the residue of unanswered questions. Asking for clarity protects peace. It allows decisions to settle. It prevents the mind from looping over possibilities. Choosing to ask these questions does not mean becoming slow or difficult. It means becoming deliberate. It means recognizing that time pressure is not always real, but its consequences can be. Later in life, life is not measured by speed. It is measured by steadiness, by continuity, by the ability to move through days without unnecessary disruption. Questions are not obstacles to that steadiness. They are its foundation. Carrying curiosity forward does not require constant vigilance. It requires permission. Permission to pause even when others seem rushed. Permission to value clarity over convenience. Permission to protect your own understanding, safety, choice, bodily comfort, and peace. These questions do not demand answers immediately. They simply need to be asked, because asking is how dignity is preserved. Asking is how independence remains active. And asking is how life continues with fewer surprises and more calm. In later years, that calm is not a luxury. It is the quiet reward of living thoughtfully.